Alright, hello class, welcome to our video tutorial on tips for effective highlighting. This is work inspired by a woman called Catherine Riley, if ever you need to look this up further on the internet. So here we go. Before starting to tell you what is effective underlining and highlighting, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what is ineffective. So we're going to start with counterexamples. What's not effective is indiscriminate highlighting. So when you highlight a whole bunch of stuff, too much information, and you highlight things like entire sentences as opposed to specific sections of a text. Don't forget, the purpose of highlighting is to make your life easier when, once you finish reading, you want to review the information that's in your text. Remember, anything that you highlight, you need to be able to recall at the end of your text, or if not recall, like formally remember off by heart, you want to at least be very, very familiar with when you're doing your survey, once again, at the end of your reading session. And by survey, I mean survol in French, so when you're surveying your text at the end. Here is a counterexample. This is what you do not want to do. Take a look at that. This is an example of an excerpt from Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. This is where you should pause the tutorial, read the excerpt here on the left before you continue, okay? So pause, read it, and then come back. All right, now you're back. What I want you to take a look at is, look at all of that. The reader has underlined both important information and background details. You've highlighted way too much. More text is underlined than is not. So the important information is actually hidden. Once you go back and survey your text, you have to kind of go through another triage again to look for what's actually important. Okay? Especially down here, there's been highlighted entire sentences as opposed to just important parts. Effective highlighting highlights only important information. It allows the reader to quickly focus on this important information, and it leaves much more text untouched rather than touched. So look at that. This is your example of effective highlighting. Do you see the distinction? I have 1, 2, 3 sentences that are highlighted. Nothing. In the previous example, this whole paragraph down here was highlighted. So I'm going to draw your attention here on the left. You see that this information identifies a new character, the relationship of the new character to Mr. Heathcliff, which is the main character, important events. It gives us indications on our main character. It tells us that he's wealthy. He has 2 homes. And so that's it. It reveals that important information about the main character. So just to sum up once again, what to highlight. You highlight key ideas, key events, so important events, characters. So you want to look for new characters and elements of characterization on both your main character and any important other people in the story. And you want to look for not just themes, but things that build, so thematic elements that let you draw a conclusion that is your theme. And literary devices. Now I know you know what literary devices is, but just as a refresher, literary devices, things like metaphors, similes, motifs, things like that, okay? Highlighted information should be easy to pick out, should not overwhelm the reader, because you want to point out only key information that you're going to return to later. Here is the kicker. First, you have to evaluate the text's importance before you highlight or underline. What does this actually entail? Well, you read the text once, and then you go back and highlight what was important. So then you go back and highlight your key ideas, your key events, your characterization, and every time you meet a new character, thematic elements, literary devices. All right? You do not highlight on your first reading. You highlight when you return. Going back to where we were. All right. This here is what you should be doing during your first reading of a text. These here are called close reading symbols. So what I want you to do from now on to all the text that you're reading for academic purposes is note what is surprising to you and put an exclamation mark next to it. If it's an informative text, do you agree? An opinion piece. Note what you agree or what you disagree with. Please put a question mark next to things that make you confused. Very important. Put a pound sign next to new information, a star next to what you think, what you feel is important. And I know that you've done tons of this last year. Connections, text to text. Is what you're reading right now, well, does it remind you of something that you've already read? Note that down. Does it remind you of something that's going on in the world right now? So, for example, if you are reading the text I Am Legend, a nice text to world connection, or when we talk about war, or when we talk about an outbreak, an outbreak of an illness, is there something that comes to mind in the world right now, right? Uh, you want to know what the key idea is, and this little heart right here next to the writer's craft. What is writer's craft? Literary elements. Um, your symbols, your metaphors, your similes, all of that. All right, and you want to note the new vocabulary. Please do this because it's going to remind you to go back and look for it in the dictionary. But at the end of your session, it's also going to let you know your progress. All the new vocabulary that you learned is going to be it's going to be in evidence. So you're going to take a look, and at the end of your session, you're going to be able to track your own learning and realize just how much new vocabulary you're actually learning, which is really rewarding if you think about it, because it's the reason that we do study language arts. All right, so that essentially concludes our tutorial on tips for effective highlighting. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask me. And that's it. Thank you.